We start in the United States, where Kamala Harris has picked her vice presidential running mate for November's elections. Tim Walz is governor of the Democratic stronghold of Minnesota. Observers say his presence on the ticket could help win over voters in other Midwestern battleground states like Wisconsin and Michigan. Harris and Walz are expected to campaign together across several swing states in the coming days. Introduced by Harris at a rally in Philadelphia, Walz said he hopes to bring the values of his state and career to Washington.
Minnesota's strength comes from our values, our commitment to working together, to seeing past our differences, to always being willing to lend a helping hand. Those are the same values I learned on the family farm and tried to instill in my students. I took it to Congress and to the state capitol, and now Vice President Harris and I are running to take those very values to the White House.
Harris, officially named the Democratic Party's presidential nominee a day earlier, chose Philadelphia to introduce her choice for vice president. It's the biggest city in Pennsylvania, a state whose electoral votes will be essential in deciding whether she or former President Donald Trump is elected on November 5th.
The stage is set for the US presidential election. Kamala Harris has found her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. The US Vice President says she's found a leader with whom to build a brighter future.
He's the kind of person who makes people feel like they belong and then inspires them to dream big. And that's the kind of vice president he will be. And that's the kind of vice president America deserves.
A little-known figure on the national stage, Walz is currently in his second term as Minnesota governor. He served in Congress for a dozen years. Before being elected to Congress, he worked as a geography teacher and a high school football coach. Walz has pushed a progressive agenda that includes free school meals, goals for tackling climate change, access to abortion, tax cuts for the middle class, and expanded pay leave for workers. Democrats believe having Walz on the Democrats' ticket could help win over voters in rural areas and the Midwestern battleground states of Wisconsin and Michigan.
I expect them to hit the ground running like they already have, and I expect good things. And it seems like they're listening to the people and seeing like what people want.
She could have like a talking dog, and I would vote for Kamala Harris. Like, I would vote for Kamala Harris anyway.
Republican opponents have been quick to criticize Harris's choice and labeled their competition as too liberal, even comparing Walz to militants known for terror attacks.
It just highlights how radical Kamala Harris is. This is a person who listened to the Hamas wing of her own party and selecting a nominee. I think it's interesting, actually, they make an interesting tag team.
Pennsylvania was the Democratic duo's first stop. Their campaign will now take them to 7 crucial swing states where they will hope to persuade undecided voters in less than 3 months.
Well, DW's Alvarez Gruber was at that rally in Philadelphia and has more.
It was an energetic first rally here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, of this new duo, Vice President Kamala Harris and her pick for Vice President, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Very personal speeches too. They spoke about many of the topics that the governor of Minnesota has achieved, especially in his first term, and that the campaign from Kamala Harris wants to introduce into the program on gun legislation, on access to reproductive health, but also on other topics that Walz has achieved. She called him Coach Walz and showed him in his career and also his biography that led for him to be so successful in his state and also now be on the Democratic ticket. A lot of energy, you can say almost relief here in the arena in Philadelphia, looking back at the last couple of weeks when Joe Biden was still the Democratic candidate for president, a tight schedule for the next couple of days. There will be many swing states, and that was, of course, a big question that many had when this was announced. Why did Kamala Harris did not choose some of the politicians from swing states, like the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, also appeared on stage, or Senator Kelly of Arizona. But it was a really energized event here in Philadelphia. The big question that many now have is, will they be able to carry on this momentum? Will they still have energy, as there's still 91 days left until the presidential election?
Ethan Bearman is a political commentator in the US. He joins us from Los Angeles in the hours after Tim Walz made his campaign rally debut. Ethan, how have his first words in Philadelphia gone down?
Extraordinarily well. The fundraising haul for the Harris-Walz campaign has raised well over $20 million in just the few hours since the announcement was made. I've heard from a lot of different people the excitement is palpable. I actually haven't heard this level or seen this level of excitement, particularly on the Democratic side, since the 2008 presidential election. And forgive me, I have to make one minor correction from your lead-in. Minnesota is not a solid blue state. It is very purple. It's a swing state in the presidential election. And I am originally from Minnesota, so I can sure speak about Tim Walz and what the attitude looks like in the Midwest.
You're in a good position then, and to tell us, having listened to Walz for that first time, did it become apparent to you why Kamala Harris picked him over people with better, wider name recognition, specifically Josh Shapiro and Mark Kelly?
Yeah, it's fascinating to see because, Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, and Senator Mark Kelly were excellent choices as well to be VP picks. But I think what it really came down to is Tim Walz brings the combination of this Midwestern good guy who knows how to communicate with everybody. He was a teacher, he was in the military, he's a hunter, he is a parent of IVF children. And he connects with people in a way that's very folksy and down home, as it's called in the Midwest, but he also knows how to attack. He apparently is the originator of this weird label that has really taken off against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, the competitors. So Shapiro is going to do a great job helping the campaign in Pennsylvania, and Senator Kelly will work his butt off in Arizona to make sure those two swing states go for the Democrats.
Yeah, so Walz has labelled Vance and Trump weird. In that very simple term, how can this simple approach to communication help Kamala Harris?
Well, Democrats typically suffer from a problem of over-explaining things, getting caught up in details, and both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are just masterful communicators. And so when you come up with a short, simple word like weird that everybody can understand and connect with, it is effective and powerful, and it doesn't require explanation. Everybody knows what you're talking about. This is a brilliant move on the part of the Harris campaign. I'm pleasantly shocked at how well these two worked together on the rally stage in Philadelphia. Their chemistry was apparent.
Trump and Vance and the Republicans seem to have been a little put off by the presence of Harris suddenly and seeing the momentum that she's built. How are they going to try and attack Walz on the campaign trail, do you think?
Yeah, the biggest thing that they're going to have on Walz is they're going to try and label him as an extremist, progressive leftist. Which is not based in reality, but that's a great attack line that this is the most extreme progressive ticket in history. But they don't have good attacks on Tim Walz. He's been a very successful governor, heralding and shepherding that state through the pandemic, through the riots after the George Floyd murder. He's the one who appointed the state attorney general to prosecute Derek Chauvin, the police officer who was convicted of murdering George Floyd. He raised 33% of children out of poverty through his policies in the state of Minnesota. He's overall very popular, so they're going to have a very hard time finding a gap there to land a solid attack on him.
Political commentator Ethan Bearman in Los Angeles. Thanks so much for your thoughts.